Brothers and sisters, imagine witnessing the most important night in human history, the night when the Son of God came into the world. A vision so powerful it sends shivers down your spine, capable of transporting you to that humble grotto in Bethlehem, where heaven touched earth. Today, we share with you the extraordinary vision of the birth of Jesus, as described by Maria Valtorta. A narrative so breathtaking in its beauty and spiritual depth that it will leave you speechless. But first, who was Maria Valtorta? Who was Maria Valtorta? Maria Valtorta was an Italian mystic who lived in the 20th century, renowned for her extraordinary spiritual writings. Her most famous work, the poem of the Man-God, or the Gospel as it was revealed to me, is a collection of visions and revelations about the lives of Jesus and Mary, offering deeper insights and enriching the canonical Gospels. Many believers consider her writings a profound source of spiritual inspiration. Through her visions, Maria Valtorta allows us to contemplate the mysteries of our faith with fresh eyes. Let us listen to her extraordinary and unique words.
I still see the inside of this poor rocky shelter where Mary and Joseph have found refuge, sharing their fate with the animals. The small fire dozes along with its keeper. Mary gently lifts her head from her resting place and looks around. She sees Joseph with his head bowed onto his chest, as if deep in thought, and realizes that weariness has overpowered his good intention to stay awake. She smiles a tender smile, and making less noise than a butterfly landing on a rose, she sits up and then kneels. She prays, a blissful smile on her face. She prays with her arms open, not fully outstretched like a cross, but almost, with her palms turned upward and forward. She seems tireless in this reverent pose. Then she bows her face down onto the hay, entering into an even deeper, more intense prayer. A long prayer. Joseph stirs. He notices that the fire is nearly extinguished and the stable is cloaked in shadow. He throws a handful of fine heather onto the embers and the flame revives. He adds larger twigs, then even thicker branches, because the cold must be biting. The cold of a serene winter night seeps through every crevice of this ruin. Poor Joseph, positioned near the entrance, let's call it an entrance, though it's merely a gap covered by his cloak, must be freezing. He warms his hands by the fire, slips off his sandals, and stretches his feet toward the heat. He warms himself. When the fire is fully ablaze and its light is steady, he turns to look. He sees nothing, not even the faint whiteness of Mary's veil that had previously traced a pale line upon the dark hay. He stands and slowly approaches her resting place. "Are you not sleeping, Mary?" he asks. He asks 3 times before she stirs and replies, "I am praying. Do you need anything?" "No, Joseph. Try to sleep a little, at least rest." "I will try, but praying does not tire me. Good night, Mary." "Good night, Joseph." Mary resumes her prayerful position. Joseph, to keep himself from succumbing to sleep again, kneels beside the fire and prays. He prays with his hands pressed to his face. Occasionally, he removes them to tend the fire, then returns to his fervent prayer. Except for the crackling of the wood and the occasional sound of the donkey stamping a hoof on the ground, there is silence. A sliver of moonlight slips through a crack in the ceiling, like a blade of ethereal silver seeking Mary. As the moon rises higher in the sky, the light extends and finally reaches her. There it is, resting upon the head of the praying woman, crowning her with radiance. Mary lifts her head as if answering a heavenly call and rises to her knees once more. Oh, how beautiful it is here. She raises her face, which seems to glow in the white moonlight, and an otherworldly smile transfigures her. What does she see? What does she hear? What does she feel? Only she could tell what she saw, heard, and felt in the radiant hour of her maternity. I can only see that the light around her grows and grows and grows. It seems to descend from heaven, to emanate from the humble things surrounding her, but above all, to radiate from her. Her dark blue garment now appears to be a soft forget-me-not blue, and her hands and face seem to take on a bluish hue, like someone illuminated by the glow of an immense pale sapphire. This colour, which reminds me, though softer, of what I see in visions of the holy paradise and in the vision of the Magi's arrival, spreads over everything, clothing it, purifying it, making it resplendent. The light flows more and more from Mary's body, absorbing the moonlight and seeming to draw in all the light heaven can give her. She is now the keeper of the light, the one destined to give this light to the world. This blessed, boundless, immeasurable, eternal, divine light that is about to be given is heralded by a dawn, a reveille, a choir of light particles that grow and grow like a rising tide, ascending like incense, descending like a flood, and spreading like a veil. The ceiling full of cracks, cobwebs, and precariously balanced debris, dark, smoky, and unwelcoming, now appears like the vaulted ceiling of a royal hall. Every large stone is a block of silver, every crack a glimmer of opal, every cobweb a priceless canopy woven of silver and diamonds. A large lizard, hibernating between two rocks, looks like an emerald jewel forgotten by a queen, and a cluster of hibernating bats appears as a precious onyx chandelier. The hay hanging from the highest manger is no longer grass, but strands of pure silver swaying in the air like the graceful tendrils of a flowing mane. The lower manger, dark with age, now seems to be a block of burnished silver. The walls appear covered in brocade, where the white silk vanishes beneath the pearly embroidery of its reliefs. And the floor? What is the floor now? It is a crystal illuminated by a radiant white light. The protruding stones look like roses of light scattered in homage, while the hollows resemble precious cups, from which aromas and perfumes might rise. The light grows ever brighter, becoming unbearable to the eyes. Within it, as if absorbed by a veil of incandescence, the Virgin disappears and emerges as the Mother. Yes, when the light becomes bearable once more, I see Mary with the newborn son in her arms. A tiny baby, rosy and plump, flailing and stretching his little hands, no bigger than rosebuds, and kicking with feet small enough to fit within the hollow of a rose. He cries with a trembling voice, like a newborn lamb, opening a tiny mouth that resembles a wild strawberry and revealing a little tongue trembling against his rosy palate. He moves his little head, so blonde it seems almost bare, a round head supported in the curve of his mother's hand. She gazes at her child and adores him, laughing and crying at the same time. She bends down to kiss him, not on his innocent head, but on the center of his chest, where beneath it beats the little heart that will one day bear a wound. She heals that wound in advance with her immaculate kiss. The ox, awakened by the bright light, rises with a loud clatter of hooves and lows, while the donkey turns its head and brays. It is the light that stirs them, but I like to think they wanted to greet their Creator on behalf of all animals. Joseph, who had been praying so intensely that he was almost in a state of rapture, suddenly stirs. Through the fingers pressed against his face, he notices an unusual light filtering through. He removes his hands, raises his head, and turns around. The ox, standing upright, obscures his view of Mary. But she calls out, "Joseph, come!" Joseph hurries to her. When he sees what has happened, he stops in his tracks, overcome with reverence, and is about to kneel where he stands. But Mary insists, "Come, Joseph." Supporting herself with her left hand on the hay, and holding the infant tightly to her heart with her right, she rises and approaches Joseph, who hesitates, torn between the desire to go to her and the fear of being irreverent. At the edge of the straw bed, the two spouses meet and gaze at one another with tears of bliss in their eyes. "Come, let us offer Jesus to the Father," says Mary. While Joseph kneels, Mary, standing between two beams supporting the roof, raises her child in her arms and says, "Here I am. For him, O God, I say this word. Here I am to do your will. And with him, I, Mary, and Joseph, my spouse. Behold your servants, Lord. May we always, in every hour and every circumstance, do your will for your glory and love." Then Mary bends down and says, "Take him, Joseph," as she offers the infant. "Me? Take him. Oh no, I am not worthy." Joseph is overwhelmed, almost paralyzed at the thought of touching God himself. But Mary, smiling, insists, "You are indeed worthy. No one more so than you, and that is why the Most High has chosen you. Take him, Joseph, and hold him while I prepare his clothes." Blushing like crimson, Joseph stretches out his arms and receives the tiny bundle of flesh, who is crying from the cold. Once he holds him, Joseph abandons his initial intention of keeping the baby at a respectful distance and draws him close to his heart. He bursts into tears, exclaiming, "Oh Lord, my God!" He bends down to kiss the tiny feet, only to find them cold. Alarmed, he sits on the ground, cradling the infant in his lap. Using his brown cloak and his hands, he tries to cover him, warm him, and protect him from the chill of the night. He considers moving closer to the fire, but the draft from the door is too strong there. It's better to stay where he is, or, better still, to move between the two animals, which shield against the wind and emit warmth. Joseph settles himself between the ox and the donkey, with his back to the door. He bends over the newborn to create a protective niche with his body. On either side of him, the grey head with long ears and the large white muzzle, with its warm breath and gentle eyes, form the walls of this improvised cradle. Meanwhile, Mary has opened the chest and taken out linens and swaddling bands. She goes to the fire to warm them and then returns to Joseph. She wraps the baby in the warmed cloth and then in her veil to protect his little head. "Where shall we lay him now?" she asks. Joseph looks around and thinks for a moment. "Wait," he says. "Let's move the two animals and their hay a bit closer, and I'll pull down some of the hay from the upper rack to place in here. The wooden sides will shield him from the air, and the hay will serve as a cushion. The ox's breath will keep him warm. The ox is more patient and calm." He sets to work, while Mary cradles her child, holding him close to her heart and resting her cheek against his tiny head to keep him warm. Joseph stokes the fire generously, creating a bright flame. He warms the hay, ensuring it's completely dry, and gathers enough to make a small mattress for the infant. Then he arranges it in the manger, shaping it into a cradle. "It's ready," he says. "But we'll need a blanket to cover him. The hay might be uncomfortable, and he'll need something to keep him warm." "Take my mantle," Mary offers. "But you'll be cold," Joseph protests. "It doesn't matter. The blanket is too rough. The mantle is soft and warm. I don't feel the cold at all." But he must not suffer any longer. Joseph takes Mary's large... soft mantle of dark blue wool, and folded double over the hay, letting one edge hang over the manger. The Saviour's first bed is ready. With her gentle, swaying steps, Mary carries the child to the manger and lays him inside. She wraps the mantle's edge around him, tucking it under his bare head, which sinks slightly into the hay, cushioned only by Mary's thin veil. Only his little face, no bigger than a man's fist, remains uncovered. The two, bent over the manger, gaze at him with blissful adoration as he sleeps his first slumber, soothed by the warmth of the swaddling bands and the hay. The gentle heat has calmed his cries and lulled him to rest. The sweet Jesus.
How wonderful! This vision reveals the birth of Jesus with a new depth, drawing us into the heart of the mystery of Christmas. It's not just a story of humility and love, but an invitation to rediscover the light of Christ in our lives. What do you think? Which part of this vision touched you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share this testimony with your loved ones. Help us spread this beauty. Your support can bring the light of the gospel to more people. May God bless us all.